I've said this before, but the Bible and greater reality is all the physical world that we can't see is what is real reality is. Our senses are limited to sight, touch, hearing. Maybe that's it. But we can perceive height, width, depth, and then time is a type of dimension also that we have. What happens in the subatomic world has to have, scientists have decided, pretty much has to have 9 dimensions, because what happens there would be absolutely miraculous if there weren't 9 dimensions. And ancient Jewish teaching basically described the spiritual world as the real inclusion of all reality, so that physical reality that we see, the 4 dimensions of height, width, depth, and time that we have, is just, less than half of what reality actually is. God has spoken to us from the realm of the 9 dimensions, and he's communicated to us in our 4 dimensions in ways to help us have faith in what's real in those 9 dimensions. I cannot remember the exact passage. It's either Hebrews or Romans, but it says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Real faith is based on substantial facts and evidence, and the biblical faith shows us it's like a peek into the entire physical world, not just our limited 4 dimensions. One of the ways that you can know if you're in truth or not is everybody's going to have a model of reality that their brain assimilates and believes. As you get older, you're going to tweak that model, and hopefully it fits actual reality more and more the older you get. I found without question, and it's not even in the same universe, lot to say ballpark, it's not even the same universe, that how biblical explanations help you really, really, really tweak your understanding of actual real reality, okay? Because they're so right on. And the way that you can tell, like, if somebody's going to say, well, Buddhist has his opinion, you have got yours, why are you going to say that yours is better? I'm not going to say my ability to perceive is better. What I'm going to say is when revealed prophecy in a religion fits future reality perfectly, that is something to consider as a very strong clue that religion is maybe true. Reality, if you said it was like a puzzle, and you're slowly, as you get older, you've got all these millions of pieces, and you're trying to fit them into the puzzle of reality. Because remember, reality is beyond what the Jewish teaching was, Baruch atah Adonai Elohim melech haolam. That means, blessed are you, O Lord, ruler of the beyond. Okay, beyond the horizon. You're trying to get a picture of what's not beyond just physical existence of 4 dimensions, because when you die, there's very strong evidence from all religions that it's not over. Okay, you're going to be somewhere somehow. Okay, what does that somewhere somehow look like? Who's in charge of it? Are there things that you need to know to prepare to get there? So when you have a picture that's got thousands of pieces, and you're putting it together, when pieces fit perfectly, okay, and they fit known reality perfectly, okay, from prophecies from a long time ago, that's a very strong indication that source is trustworthy. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, because we're going to see that writings from the Old Testament, prophecies concerning the coming of the Messiah, and Jewish teaching, extra biblical writings, some of them fit so perfectly that no other religion comes, like, not you don't even say religion comes close. It's not in the ballpark. It's not even the same universe. So we're going to start with we started this talk in John 11, and this was the story of Jesus raising Lazarus. And the reason I wanted to start there is because so many things in that story were prophesied and have to do with prophecy that Jewish writers and Jewish sages of old talked about. So when Jesus, yes, our Messiah, Yeshua, shows up on the scene and he's healing the sick, that's something the rabbis said he would do. If he's raising the dead, we read about it last time, something the rabbis said he would do. Okay? So in John 3, Jesus says, "And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this?" And she says unto him, "Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which is come into the world." And Jesus said unto, this is in John 11:25, Jesus said unto her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." You go back to Job 19, and here's what Job 19 says. "And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God." So Job's saying, when I die, worms are going to kill my dead body. They're going to eat my dead body, but in a type of flesh, I'm going to see God. He must be resurrected. So when Jesus says, "I'm the resurrection and the life," that's right there. It's in the book of Job. Also in Isaiah chapter 26, just check these words out. Isaiah 26, "Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body they shall arise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust, for thy dew is as the dew of the herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead." There it's talking about a resurrection. But now here's a rapture, though. Okay, a lot of modern church people tell you, well, the rapture's for the church, it's not for the Jew. Really? Well, why is it talking about a resurrection here? And here, look, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast." Remember here, if you're dead, you don't care that Christ is coming to destroy the world, because your soul's already gone up. But these are people these are believers that are still on earth. What's going to happen to them? He's going to say, "Come, my people, enter into thy chambers." And the reason it's chambers is there's in the New Testament, when it talks about that we're clothed with Paul talks about being clothed with a heavenly body. The word there's okaterion, and it means an earthly, like a heavenly tabernacle. So this body houses my soul, but in the afterlife, it's more than just a body. It's like a dwelling place, okay? A multi-dimensional dwelling place. So maybe in one sense, I would have, in the afterlife, have 2 arms and 2 legs, okay? But there's another sense that I can go into the other dimensions and maybe even have a mansion within my body. I don't know if you ever watched Chronicles of Narnia. You know, they go into the wardrobe and there's a whole another 4-dimensional world. Okay? Why that's in that book is it's trying to tell you that the afterlife is multidimensional. Okay? But this word chambers for the Old Testament is like, okay, it's like okaterion in the New Testament. It's a dwelling place. So when it's saying, "Come, my people," it could be talking about, I'm not saying it for sure, but it sounds like it's talking about your soul's entering its new chamber. "Shut thy doors about thee, hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain." Okay, the, well, you know he's coming to punish the earth, so you know these are on the earth. They're not dead yet. They haven't died yet. So here you have the dead in Christ rise first. Here you have those that are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord. Right there's a rapture, and it's talking about a resurrection here for sure. Okay, and it's basically saying together with my dead body. What's that? That's a clue. Messiah is going to rise from the dead. Okay, right there in Isaiah. Right, so would Messiah raise the dead? Well, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, we talked about it last talk, but this is from a messianic apocalypse, and it's 4Q521. That's the scroll, okay, from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this is the English translation. For he will heal the wounded and revive the dead and bring about good news to the poor. That is not direct quote from any Old Testament prophet. That is a quotation from a ancient Jewish sage that was recorded. Okay? And he's saying, because it never comes out, the Bible never specifically says that Messiah is going to raise the dead. But the Jews understood for other reasons that he's going to raise the dead. And they basically said, he will heal the wounded and revive the dead. So when Yeshua shows up to Mary and Martha, when Lazarus has died, their brother, he's going to rise him from the dead. And he says, Lord, this sickness is unto thy glory. Okay? Because he knew that he was going to fulfill this prophecy. Fills it exactly. Who is there any other religion on earth that prophesied somebody would rise from the dead and then would have it happen in front of like so many witnesses? And this actually, when this happened and there's so many witnesses, probably a third of the people believed in Christ. A third of them were like, didn't know what to make of it, and a third of them went and told the Pharisees and tattled on them. Okay. So would the Messiah's dead body arise? Wouldn't that mean he'd have to die and be resurrected? Okay, well, John 10:17 says, therefore my Father doth love me, because I lay down my life that I may take it again. Christ himself, has there ever been a person on earth that said, I'm going to die and resurrect myself, and actually had witnesses that said, like, over 500 people saw him? Okay, there's not even close that anyone else even fits that, and there could even pull it off except Yeshua the Messiah, the real true Messiah. So these are we're building this picture, and we got puzzle. We got a puzzle fits from the messianic apocalypse. 4Q521 fits. It fits what Jesus himself prophesied. Okay, that's a puzzle picture, a piece of the puzzle that fits. The Isaiah 26, a piece of the puzzle that fits exactly. Okay, you get to this is really interesting. This is from the Talmud now. Okay, so Dead Sea Scrolls. You got to understand, Dead Sea Scrolls are Jewish, but the rabbis don't believe that all the Dead Sea Scrolls stuff is inspired. Okay? They believe the Talmud, they'll stop short and say the Talmud's not inspired, but they'll say it's, in a way, the Talmud, even though it's not inspired, they'll say the Talmud is more true than the Bible even, because it's our sages of old explaining the Bible in a way that we can understand. So when the Talmud says something, it's very, very, very Jewish. Okay? Yes, the Dead Sea Scrolls were written by Jews. Okay? Before the time of Christ. But Sanhedrin, the Talmud, is absolutely modern Jews accept that. And here's what it says. Rab says, if Messiah is among the living in this generation, he is a person such as our saintly Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who was renowned for his sanctity, piety, and Torah knowledge. If the Messiah is among the dead, he is a person such as Daniel, the beloved man. Okay, a Messiah among the dead? It means he'd have to resurrect. Okay, and the modern Hasidic Jews, the Hasidim called Chabad Lubavitch, they believe Messiah can die and resurrect. And a lot of it, their belief comes from that passage right there in the Talmud, because they are, the Hasidim, or the Hasidic Jews, are the Talmud specialists of the world. Imagine that. They're the Orthodox of the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, who reject Yeshua of Nazareth, but they still believe Messiah could resurrect, die and resurrect. It's so shockingly close, but no cigar. Why no cigar? Because God said that blindness is in part to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. God has allowed Satan to blind the eyes of his own people. Why would God do that? Okay, well, I'm not God, but can you see how this validates the truth of the Bible? Because this is not some conspiracy. The one thing, this is obviously, the Bible is, and the Jewish teachings is obviously not some conspiracy to, after the fact, rewrite your prophets to fit what actually happened, to make it look like they prophesied the truth. That's what the Islamic religionists, the Muslims, basically accuse the Jews of rewriting, down through the years, rewriting their scriptures. Really? Because would they put, after Jesus died on the cross, would they put things in there? They reject him. Would they ever put things in there that validate him on the cross? Okay, well, the answer is obviously no. And that the fact that is there, you see that time and time and time again in Jewish literature. There's so many things that validate the suffering servant that who dies. Okay, that it's just it's so many puzzle pieces that are. Imagine this: the creators of the puzzle piece wouldn't ever want it to fit the picture of the New Testament, and it fits perfectly. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that. The creators of the puzzle pieces of the discussions, the messianic discussions amongst ancient Jewish rabbis, would never, ever, ever want their discussions to fit Jesus, the one they hate. Yet they fit him perfectly. In many cases, not all cases, but in many cases. Okay. Rabbinic Judaism on Messiah, the anointed. The word Messiah in Hebrew just means anointed in English, and it's worded as Christ in Greek. In the Talmud, specifically in Sukkah 52b, there's 4 craftsmen, or four smiths, or some people call them 4 carpenters. And it's very interesting that Jesus was what? He was a carpenter. Okay? In the Talmud was a prophecy that he would be a craftsman, and lo and behold, Jesus is a carpenter. Okay? Is that a coincidence? Okay, I don't think so. But the 4 craftsmen are talked about, and they refer to figures identified as craftsmen in the book of Zechariah, and Zechariah chapter 2, verse 3. And it says they're instrumental in rebuilding and restoring Jerusalem. Rabbi Shimon Hasidah cited Rabbi Hannah Bar Bizana and identifies them as Messiah. Here's the 4 craftsmen. He identifies them as Messiah ben David. Ben is son of. So Messiah, son of David. Messiah ben Joseph. That's Messiah, son of Joseph. Wasn't it interesting? Yeshua of Nazareth, his earthly father was named Joseph. Is that a coincidence? Okay. The other craftsman is Elijah. He'd be the prophet, because there's other passages, other rabbis talk about this too, and don't call him Elijah, but they say he's the prophet, and or the righteous priest, actually the righteous high priest. Okay, which Paul basically says Jesus is our high priest. Okay, because he makes atonement. But in that passage in the Talmud, it's discussing what you had in Zechariah, and Messiah is described as four craftsmen, or like four carpenters. Okay, one is called a prophet, like Elijah, not necessarily. One's a priest, like Melchizedek. Okay, in Genesis. One's a king, like Messiah ben David, Messiah son of David, and one's a suffering servant. We in the New Testament, we speak of Jesus as he's prophet, priest, and king. Did Gentile Christians invent the idea that Jesus is prophet, priest, and king? The answer is no. That's a Jewish invention from before the time Christ was born. Okay, they knew he would be prophet, priest, and king. But the Messiah ben Joseph figure, it's not that there's four Messiahs, but there could have been. There are multiple opinions as to how's Messiah going to appear. Could it be one guy that appears as a prophet sometimes, as a priest, as a king? Okay, a lot of the consensus probably was that he would be a prophet, priest, and king. But the suffering servant one couldn't be that guy, could it? Well, it could be. Well, then that means he must suffer defeat, like he dies, or looks like he dies and returns, okay? Or there's two Messiahs. There's the prophet, priest, king guy, and then there's the Messiah ben Joseph who suffers, okay? But we're going to read, why do the Jews think that there was a Messiah ben Joseph that would suffer? These are passages from Isaiah. Isaiah is high holy ground of the Old Testament to the Jews. Isaiah is the most, next to Moses, okay? Isaiah is the highest holy ground. He's the highest of the prophets. A lot of it is because of his insight into Messiah. But here, Isaiah is speaking of an individual. We're going to have to see who he's talking about, because the rabbis were divided as to who he's talking about. But it starts in everybody knows Isaiah 53. You know that, right? Isaiah 53.
What is it?
Oh, you don't. Well, it's a good thing you're here. I'm surprised your school's not teaching you that. Okay. Isaiah 53 is one of the most important passages for a New Testament believer to know out of the Old Testament. But actually, Isaiah 53 actually starts at the end of Isaiah 52. And the reason is because chapter headings and verses were added later. There are no such things really as chapters and verses. It's just that Christians and Jews added it later so that we would know if we're citing a section, we'd know where to find it. Okay. So we're starting in Isaiah 52, the end of it, near the end. Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. Okay, so here's a servant. It's talking about the servant. As many as were astonished at thee, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. The kings shall shut their mouths at him. For that which has not been told of them they shall see, and that which they had not heard they shall consider. Okay, what's this going on here? Well, this is a guy who's a servant who's going to deal very prudently. He's going to be extolled and be very high in the eyes of God. Okay, but then it says men were astonished at him. His visage was so marred, means his appearance was so marred more than any man. Okay, like as if his body and face would be destroyed some way to where you couldn't even recognize him. Okay, as being a man, right? I've seen people who've been like beat up real bad and punched in the face or hit in the head with ball bats and stuff, or in bad car accidents. Literally, I've seen people whose heads are swollen twice the size of a normal head. okay? Their eyes get swollen shut. You can, if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can actually. There used to be. I don't know if there still is, but they used to publish them in Honduras. The gangs would beat people's heads and machete them, and their faces were just pulps, no eyes, no nose. Okay, their head was swollen like twice the size, and it looked like a freaking pumpkin. Okay, it's just disgusting. And sometimes they were like that before they died. Okay, just horrendous. But remember when Christ, they punched him repeatedly in the face. Okay, repeatedly. Okay, I'm not going to go into it, but so shall he sprinkle many nations. What's that? Well, the priest sprinkles the blood to make atonement for the population of Israel. That means it appears that Isaiah is saying this guy's gonna his body's gonna be broken, and as an offering, a blood offering. Okay, this is what he's pretty much saying. Okay, the kings of the earth shall shut their mouths at him. What's that mean? That means nobody. This guy is higher than them, and there's nothing to say. When, if we're having a discussion, and the chief rabbi or the chief, let's say we're in government or whatever, we're having a discussion, or let's say we're American Indians having a discussion about what we think should happen, and the chief walks in, we all shut up, okay? Because the chief's going to make the decision. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So these people realize this guy who's getting beat to a pulp is higher than them. For that which has not been told they shall see, and that which they had not heard they shall consider. Who hath believed our report? Hey, I'm going to try to say this by memory, because when I was his age, I learned this by memory. See if I can still remember. Who hath believed our report? To whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and we shall see him. There is no beauty that we shall desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Yet we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not, stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. Yet he was bruised for our iniquities, for the chastisement of our peace was for chastisement of our peace was he stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. All right, well, I messed up there, but okay. Surely he bore our griefs, counted our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he is wounded for our transgressions, he is bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes we are healed. Okay? All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb before the shearers is dumb or doesn't speak, so he openeth not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. Who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. Okay, look, I'm just going to talk about, okay. All we like sheep have gone astray. We've turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. Okay, it seems like what's happening to this individual is for the sins of others. Okay? When it says, he is wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, for the sins of others. When it says, with his stripes we are healed, that verse has been very, very, very misused by the charismatic community, because while it does mean we are healed of everything, it's mainly pointing to healed of the consequences of our sin. It's secondary that we're healed of disease, because disease is a consequence of Adam's sin. You understand what I'm saying? But the primary meaning of by his stripes we are healed is that we are healed of the consequences of our sin. Okay? And that verse does of healed physical healing, while it is true, It for sure only applies to the afterlife. It may or may not apply to this life. And why I say may or may not is there's people that the church prays for, that people get, they get healed, they get, improve, their sickness goes away, they improve. But there's other people, the death rate's still 1 to 1. Eventually you're going to die. We're all going to die of something, and the coroner will say what we died of: heart failure, cancer, okay, yada yada, whatever it is, okay, car accident. So while it's true, by his stripes we are healed, it mainly means the consequences of our sin. We are healed from the eternal consequences of our sin. Eternal death and sickness cannot touch us, but physical earthly sickness can still touch us. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. The Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is dumb, he openeth not his mouth. Okay, now check this out. He was taken from prison and from judgment. Who shall declare his generation? Remember, this is Isaiah. This is like thousands, over 1,000 years before Christ is born. Okay, remember Christ, what happened? They arrested him, they put him in prison temporarily, then he stood judgment. He was taken from prison and judgment. Okay? Who shall declare his generation? What's that mean? It means he's not going to have any children. Okay? He's going to die without posterity. Okay? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. Cut off always means killed in Hebrew. And this specifically tells you cut off out of the land of the living. It doesn't mean he died for eternity. Okay? His spirit retained life for 3 days and 3 nights in the grave, and then his body returned to him. Okay? Resurrected. He made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Well, what's that? Remember, who did he die between? He died between two thieves who admitted that they deserved what they're getting on the cross. He died with the wicked. Okay? He made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich in his death, he was buried in the rich man's tomb, Joseph of Arimathea. How could Isaiah be so perfectly correct if he wasn't perfectly correct? Right? Okay, this is Isaiah, 1,000 years before Christ was born. Right? Or they're not 1,000, maybe 500 years. I think it was more like 500 or 600 years before Christ was born. And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he hath done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, and he shall prolong his days. And the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. What's that mean, see his seed? Well, if he's not going to have any children, any physical children, but he's going to have seed, what's that mean? Because he shall see his seed and prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. That means that all the people that get born again, remember this, the first time the word seed from the God's perspective appears is in Genesis, when it says the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent. That is a prophecy of Christ dying. The serpent would bruise his heel, but the Messiah is going to kill the serpent, to kill Satan ultimately. So that seed is a messianic indicator. It's a clue. So when it says he shall see his seed and he shall prolong his days, the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand, it's talking about the spiritual seed of the born again. Because there's physical seed. I'm born of a woman. Yes, but it's two parts to me. There's my body and my spirit. Okay? The spirit is what gets born again. And that is what Christ dies for. Christ doesn't die for it. So yes, by his stripes we're healed. But he does not die for this physical body. Okay? That's why this physical body still gets sick. Christ dies for our spirit to give us a new body, a new okaterion, or a new chamber. Okay? Come, my people, hide thyself in thy chambers for a little moment, till the indignation be overpast. Okay. And he was numbered with the transgressors, and bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. So it says there was no deceit in his mouth and no fault in him, but he was numbered with the transgressors. How's that? Because he died on a cross he died a criminal's death. Isaiah's got it. Look, how many specific prophecies were filled in this passage? How many specific prophecies did Isaiah give in this passage? I didn't count them. There's at least 10 or 15. Okay? Specific prophecies. And not one of them is even the slightest bit incorrect. They're all perfect. Have you ever heard of a prophet that can do that? That's not really, God's not the real God of the universe. The multidimensional God of the universe isn't speaking through him. Okay. But now we're going to look at Daniel, okay? Have you guys heard of Daniel chapter 9 prophecies? Have you been taught that? Prophet Daniel lived during the Babylonian, the latter part of during the Babylonian Empire, and he lived Daniel lived through the Babylonian Empire, all the way through it, and into the beginning of the Persian Empire. There's a lot of mental illness that happens to people because they don't have a solid footing in anything. If you don't, in your life, if you don't have something that you consider is worth dying for, and I'm not saying that you would be willing to actually die, but because few people are willing to die for what they believe. But if you don't have something you're at least thinking that is worth dying for in your life, then life is really meaningless. When your life's meaningless, you look at life, you say, what's the point of it? Okay? What's the point if I'm a good boy or a bad boy? Is there such thing as good or bad? Okay? What's the point if I have a big house or not? What's the point if I actually work for a living or live off other people? What's the point? Well, if there's an afterlife and there's a judge, everything has a point. And if you know that you're literally, look, I don't want to pick on people. I know somebody right now. They're very aged. They're going into Alzheimer's. And the other day they picked up a knife and said, "I just want to kill myself." Okay. That particular person had lived their life praying for a lot of things that they thought that they wanted God to answer their prayers, things that never happened. And now that they've come to the end of their life and they're literally, they're on hospice, they have nothing now to, in their opinion, they have nothing to live for, because it's not worth praying, because God doesn't look at things. They haven't lost their faith in God, but it's not worth praying, because to them, after all these years of praying for certain things to happen, family troubles and stuff to go away that never did, they've come to the conclusion that God's opinion and interests aren't in line with theirs. So they pretty much given up on prayer, and they just want God to take them home. They still believe in God. Okay, but if you get to that point, that's a depressive state that if you stay there, you're going to need medication, okay? Or you can go into organ failure, okay? A nervous breakdown. Organ failure is when your body quits on you, okay? That can happen. Like if somebody's being tortured real bad, their body can say, I give up. I don't want to live anymore. Your organs can start to fail. It's a way to. It's a protective mechanism to actually take you out of here should the suffering get too intense. A lot of it has to do with your mind state. Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with your mind state. But the thing is, these same people would have, if somebody was going deaf, for example, they would have prayed for the person to have hearing, And if the person ended up going deaf, they would have considered, well, their prayers weren't answered. Okay, how about this for an alternative viewpoint? My grandmother was deaf. But the one thing she did, and before she died, she went blind too, and that's horrible to be deaf and blind, because then you start to hallucinate because you lose your grounding. But she was grounded in the Word, so she didn't go nuts. But even before that, when she's deaf, she prayed for every day, every morning, for every one of her children to be saved, every one of her grandchildren. Okay. She was German. I lived with my family for 3 years, or actually for 4 years. I lived in her house and spent 1/3 of my time sleeping with my parents, 1/3 of my time sleeping with my aunt and uncle, 1/3 of my time with my grandmother. The third of the time I was with my grandmother, we prayed every day. And I can still remember this German prayer she taught me. I'm going to tell it you guys. I probably have told you before.
You haven't. No,
I haven't?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I start crying during saying it, maybe I won't. But if I do, it's because this is a 4-year-old speaking German. It doesn't come out exactly right because I moved away when I was 4. But it's not that she taught me the prayer. It's just that she did it and I heard it over and over and over. And I started trying to pray with her. Okay, because I didn't have anything else to do. I started when I was like 2. From the time I was 2 and can even think at all to the time from the time I could talk. When can you talk? Maybe not 2. How old are you when you can talk? 3? I can't remember.
2 or 3.
3 or 4. Anyway, so here's how it goes. Ich bin klein, mein Herz ist rein, Liemann kann wohnen. Biersesos allein, liebe Gott, mach mich from, dass ich in dein Himmel komm. Jesus in mein Herz, Christus in mein Sinn, Gottes Namen schlafe gein. Amen. Okay? The most important parts of it is Christus in mein Sinn is Christ in my mind. Jesus in mein Herz is Jesus in my heart. Okay? Why that's so significant is because to date, none of the people she's prayed for have died without being saved. And our family was basically pagan, and we all got saved. It was a miracle. I found out later we had to go visit Mrs. Snyder. Whenever I went to visit my grandmother, we always had to visit the neighbor lady, Mrs. Snyder. Her house smelled like old people. Her one son, he was really skinny, really pasty, white, pale, sickly all the time, okay? That my mother-in-law would have been praying, in the charismatic way for him to be healed, and he never was. But I found out later that my grandmother, Mrs. Snyder, and Glenn prayed for us to be saved. And miraculously we were. Why I'm telling you that is no matter you get in an accident, you become a quadriplegic, you're never getting better, right? Do you just give up on life because God can't answer your prayer to heal you? You can pray. Okay? You can pray people into the kingdom of God. Sickly, quadriplegic, whatever. Okay? Suicide, your life always has worth. If you know God, your life has worth. Because the author of that book says your life has worth. Okay? And because to your dying breath you can praise him and you can pray for people. And and you're really, really, really doing something. Okay? If all you're doing is praying, you're really, really doing something. Because God may not answer the prayer for somebody to get healthy, wealthy, wise. But he's more likely to answer the prayer for salvation for people or for spiritual answers to prayer that really matter. Because if I can't hear and then I can hear, it only affects like 70 years of my life on earth. What about my eternity? That's more important. When you know the Bible, people are going to come along with other opinions of their views on life and reality and afterlife and spiritual things. if you really know the Bible, you can never ever be moved, and you will be of sound mind till the day you die. I mean, unless you get Alzheimer's, okay, but you're not gonna be cringing in fear later on in your life as an old person, because you're gonna know, and you're never ever gonna feel worthless, never, okay, because you're never gonna be worthless. So John 11. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She said to him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, or the Son of God, who should come into the world. Jews today would say, God doesn't have a son. How come Mary, the sister of Martha, knows that Jesus is the Son of God? Is that because Christians wrote the New Testament? No, Jewish people wrote the New Testament. Okay? And calling Jesus the Son of God is a very Jewish thing, okay, as we're about to find out. Let's look. Okay, Matthew 16, Jesus said unto them, But whom say ye that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Okay, who taught him that? He's Jewish. Did Jesus have to tell him ahead of time, hey, I'm going to ask you who I am, and I want you to tell me I'm the Son of God? Because you never heard that before, but I want you to answer and shock everyone with your knowledge. Okay, no, he didn't say that. He just said, who are you? And Simon knew he's the Son of God. Simon Peter. Okay, where did he come up with Son of God idea? Okay, well, Proverbs 30, verse 4. Who hath ascended unto heaven? Who hath descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fists? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Well, he's talking about God, of course. Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell me? Proverbs 30, verse 4 tells you God has a son. Daniel 3. And he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Daniel mentions the Son of God. Okay? Psalms 2, Psalms 2, 7 through 12. I will declare the decree, the Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Okay, well, is he talking about David? Okay, well, let's see. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Would you put your trust in David? David had adultery and murdered. Is he somebody you could trust? Okay? The Son is something else than David. And kisses ring or kiss his hand. Like, basically, what it means is bow to him so he can be your savior, so he doesn't have to be your judge. You understand? Are these not messianic prophecies? Okay, how about this one in Chronicles? And it shall come to pass when thy days be expired. This is Nathan the prophet is talking to David, and he says, Come to pass when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers, meaning you're going to die. But I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. And he shall build me an house, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. Oh, well, that's talking about Solomon, right? Is it? Is Solomon's throne going to be established forever? Solomon himself going to be established forever? Solomon's throne is going to be established forever, okay? But when it says I will be his father, he shall be my son, and it's established forever, isn't that a little bit? I mean, that's going beyond just a flesh and blood king, right? Okay, did the rabbis think it was? Well, let's look at this, right? From the Dead Sea Scrolls again. This is called the 4Q Florilegium, okay, scroll. The Lord declares to you, this is the translation in English, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, meaning this is Jewish writings preserved by the Essenes that were not in the Talmud, but were said by some Jewish sage at some time in history that it was considered important enough to record that this is a Jewish teaching. Okay? The Lord declares to you that he will build you a house. I will raise up your seed after you. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. Well, no problem. He's basically quoting Nathan. Okay, but what about this? He is the branch of David who shall arise with the interpreter of the law, okay, to rule in Zion at the end of time. Now you know that the Jews didn't apply that passage only to Solomon. You understand? It's a messianic passage. He's going to be the Son of God. Okay, you follow that? Okay, I will be his father. He shall be my son. He is the branch of David. Okay, who shall arise. Okay, Solomon dead and gone. This guy hadn't come yet. Shall arise. And actually going to rise from the dead is what it really means. Okay, I will raise up the tent of David that is falling. That is to say, the fallen tent of David is he who shall arise to save Israel. And by the way, because the word fallen in Hebrew is nephal, and the Nephilim come from that verb. A lot of the rabbis said that when Christ returns, that there's going to be Nephilim on the earth again. And I tell you that same thing too. Okay, I agree with the rabbis. Okay, we're gonna see when Christ returns the second time, there will be Nephilim. Okay, on the earth. Antichrist is a Nephilim. He's half angel, half human. That's what a Nephilim is. Okay, I'm gonna read this. Okay, that prophecy that was given to Nathan was repeated, or given by Nathan to David, was repeated in the book of Psalm 89. If you guys should remember Psalm 89 for the rest of your lives. Just commit. You don't have to memorize the passage, but commit that passage, Psalm 89, to your memory bank, because it is not just it's not just a messianic passage, but it is the passage that will support you when you fail. Okay, if you do fail, if you sin, right? Like I've sinned a lot, it's going to support me. Okay, here's what it says: I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant. Thy seed will I establish forever, and build thy throne to all generations. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my law, and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes, and keep not my commandments, then I will visit their transgression with the rod, and their iniquity with stripes, meaning I'll punish them. I'll punish the nation. If the leader of Israel, the king of Israel, falls away from God, God is going to punish the nation. Nevertheless, this is what you need to always remember. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. Here's why that's so important. Millions and millions of Muslims today say that because Israel failed as a nation and God wiped them out at 70 AD, that they're done. That God was going to start over, and he had always planned to start over with Ishmael. Okay? Basically, they say that because Israel sins, the kings of Israel sin, that God forsakes Israel. That passage in Psalm 89 tells you God is never going to forsake Israel. Okay? Here's another one. The Mormons say God's not going to forsake the Jews. It's another satanic lie. But they say God's going to forsake Jerusalem. That's why Zion is a place in Utah called Zion. Because they believe that this Jew named Lehi, at the time of Hezekiah in the Old Testament, that he realized that the Jews had gotten so wicked that God had to start Jews over in a different land. Okay, remember, Messiah will, remember this for the rest of your lives, Messiah will rule and reign in Jerusalem, in the Middle East, in Palestine. Not in Utah, okay? And it's not going to be Ishmael in Palestine. It's going to be a Jewish Messiah. Can Ishmael be part of it? Of course. So could the Mormons. Okay, if they get born again and if they believe Jesus is God, okay, and accept him as Savior, they become born again because he's going to what? Sprinkle the nations. Okay? Sprinkle the nations. All nations can be saved and brought into being born again, not just Jews. Okay, we're going to end with this. This will shock you, and this will be the last thing. This is okay. The Greek Septuagint was mainly what it was supposed to be was the Jewish Old Testament translated into Greek. A little bit of background: the people that did this were not the ultra-Orthodox Jews. The people that did this were more along the lines of liberal Jews. So Orthodox Jews don't fully accept the validity of the Greek Septuagint. However, it was the language of the common people, so almost everyone at the time of Christ, when they read the Bible, in Palestine even, so many Jews didn't speak Hebrew by then that the Greek Septuagint was the predominant scripture that the general population used. And by the way, the translators weren't trying to twist the scriptures into something that they're not. The translators were trying to do the best they could to translate, but just know that their opinions were more allegorical. Like Orthodox rabbis, this is the Pharisees at the time of Christ, they so revered the scriptures that they put the scriptures on this pedestal that humans couldn't understand it, that you needed the rabbis to understand it. So that as time went on, the rabbis became the scripture. Do you understand what I just said? Mm-hmm. Because for you, and actually for me, we can't read the Hebrew Old Testament and understand it. You're not a learned rabbi that has studied for 20 plus years. You got to be 50 years old, having studied for like 20, 30 years before you can even be considered that you can understand it.
They're basically like lawyers, right?
Because that's a good point, because the Torah was their legal book. If you ever look at like U.S. laws, like the Federal Code of Regulations, even just in medicine is like this thick. Okay, you're like, you can't possibly read it all. You got to be an attorney to be able to interpret it, and then you're still going to have differing opinions. The same thing is true in how Torah was applied. So the Pharisees were like the lawyers of the day and the religious leaders, all wrapped up in one. It's why they had so much money, because they were the attorneys. Okay? But it did serve them that only they could really understand it, because that means you had to pay a rabbi like you have to pay a lawyer to argue your case. So it made them money. Mm-hmm. That's not really why that came about. That was a result of the fact that the rabbis literally thought that you had to be a rabbi, you had to be a Pharisee type person to understand the scriptures. Because of that, the rabbinical discussions took precedence over the scriptures. The scriptures were pushed to the background. They were read in public services, but whenever you were looking for an application of and an interpretation to the Torah or to the prophets, you always listen to the rabbi, not the actual writing. Okay. Now, having said that, you get to the time of Christ, and Christ is arguing with the rabbis. Over time, your rabbis replace the scriptures so much so that they're not even really reflecting the scriptures. Okay? Here's an example. If the Torah had said, you want to be righteous, we want you to walk the town on the Sabbath, we want you to walk with no shirt on. Okay? And to honor their teacher, the pupils of that rabbi, when they got older, would teach you have to walk with no shirt and no shoes. Okay? Their pupils would teach you have to walk with no shirt, no shoes, nothing but your underwear. And then
and the police would come in and they'd teach them that you have to go to jail.
Well, by the third generation or fourth generation, they'd be teaching you have to walk naked. You understand how it gets to absurdity when you get away from the actual scriptures? And that's what Jesus basically said. Their rules, like can't work on the Sabbath, became you can't even walk through a field on the Sabbath because ears of corn, like little kernels of corn, could knock on the ground, and you're planting. That's work. Okay, it's crazy.
You can't turn on a light.
Yeah, you can't turn on a light. Okay, so you come up with the Greek Jews that were the liberal Jews. They said that's all hogwash. You don't have to be a rabbi to interpret the scripture. We're going to read the scriptures and we're going to interpret them. But just know that they did so allegorically, so they were the liberal ones. You can't trust them 100% either, because they, like Philo, okay, was one. But Philo teaches so many very, very, very important things. He basically says how God is synonymous with the Word. Okay, the Word of the Lord is a type of emanation of God. So when Jesus said is in the beginning, or when John says in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, that was almost exactly what Philo of Alexander had said. And Philo of Alexander was one of the guys that came from that line that published the Greek Septuagint. Okay? So even though they're liberal, they at least stuck to the scriptures and tried to figure out what they really meant, as opposed to reading the rabbis that came before them. You understand what I'm saying? So they didn't read successions of generations of rabbis to understand God. They read the Torah to understand God, but didn't take it fully literally. Okay? Well, this is from that time. In the Greek Septuagint, a Jewish book, interpreting how they would expect to see Messiah. Now understand, modern Jews reject this. But Jews at the time of Christ, very familiar with this teaching, and about ready to read you, because it was in the appendix of their Bible, called the Book of the Wisdom of Solomon. It's, you know how we have the extra biblical books that might be in the appendix of our Bible? Okay, the Greek Septuagint had an appendix too that included rabbinical teachings. This was a rabbinical teaching included in the Septuagint. And here's what it says, translated from Greek to English. Therefore let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us with our offending the law, and objecteth to our infamy and the transgressing of our education. He professeth to have the knowledge of God, and calleth himself the child of the Lord, or the Son of God. Okay, if you follow me here? Okay. He was made to reprove our thoughts. He is grievous unto us, even to behold, for his life is not like other men's. His ways are of another fashion. They're admitting this guy isn't just a human, okay? We are esteemed of him as counterfeits. It's like he looks... This is describing Jesus and the Pharisees before Jesus and the Pharisees occurred. Okay? But it's describing it to the T. Jesus called them counterfeits. Called them whited sepulchres. What's a whited sepulchre? Well, in the Torah, when you're not allowed, you're a Jew is not allowed to touch a grave. So they would paint the grave spots white. Okay? So that to be clean, so you're never ever going to touch a grave. Man, the Torah never said you couldn't touch a grave stone. You couldn't touch the dead body. Okay? So Jesus called the Pharisees, you're all whited sepulchres, but inside of you, in your heart, is full of dead men's bones. He goes, you won't even, you paint the graves white to mark them, so you walk like 6 feet away from them, but inside your own heart are the dead men's bones. You understand? Okay. This is describing that. It's just very interesting. Okay? We are esteemed of him as counterfeits. He abstaineth from our ways as from filthiness, as if we're filthy. Yeah, Jesus said, you're filthy graves, he called them. He pronounceth the end of the just to be blessed, and maketh his boast that God is his Father. In other words, what did Jesus say? My Father. He always said, my Father. Their Jews are expecting a individual to show up to castigate the rulers, okay, and to call Jesus, their God, his Father, okay? Let us see if his words are true. Let us prove what shall happen in the end of him. For he is the just man, for if the just man be the Son of God, then he or God will help him and deliver him from the hand of his enemies. Remember, they said, if he's the Son of God, let him come down off the cross and let him help him. He saved others, himself he cannot save. Why? Because they said, because he's not, they were expecting to see. Okay, that's why when Caiaphas said, do you know nothing at all? Is it not expedient that one should die for the people? Okay, Caiaphas knew this teaching of this guy, and he knew this guy would be against them, but he's just the one that points the finger. He's not really the kingly Messiah, okay? He's this shadowy figure, Messiah ben Joseph figure, that's not the king. He's really inconsequential to us. Well, if Jesus is going to act like that guy, let's give him what he wants, okay? And look what it says they're going to do to this guy, okay? This is before the time of Christ. This is written, okay? I got to hammer that home. If the just man be the Son of God, he will help him and deliver him from the hand of his enemies. Let us examine him with despitefulness and torture, that we may know his meekness and prove his patience. Okay, if he's really the Son of God, he'll take it and won't complain. Remember, as a sheep before his shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. They're specifically coming and telling you how they're going to torture and kill the righteous one, okay, who calls himself the Son of God, the child of God. Let us examine him with despitefulness and torture, that we may know his meekness and prove his patience. Let us condemn him a shameful death, for by his own saying he shall be respected. That teaching is exactly why Caiaphas said, look, he's a thorn in our sides, but y'all know nothing. Our sages even tell us it's expedient that one should die, and we test them and see. Okay? And what Caiaphas was really expecting was that Jesus would fall apart under the pressure. Caiaphas did not think that Jesus was actually a miraculous Son of God. Caiaphas would have been one that didn't hold to this, that would have rejected this. He would have said, some of our rabbis said this. I don't buy this passage. But since it's in our teaching, and since this Jesus, this Yeshua figure, Yeshua of Nazareth, seems to be, man, he fits. That's where he fits. Let's give him what he wants. Let's torture him to death and test him and see. He's going to fail. He's going to cave. Okay? That's what Caiaphas was saying. Okay? And of course, for that to be there, and by the way, we're going to end right now at this, but when it says, we are esteemed of him as counterfeits, do you guys really think it's just you think the Pharisees are the only posers in the world? The counterfeits, the posers? You know what a poser is, right? Like, somebody that fakes it. Okay, you know. Okay, Psalm 39:5. Every man at his best is vanity. Every man at his best is a poser or pretender. That word vanity means fraudulent. Okay? Every man. Okay, think about the people you work with. who are the hot shots, okay? Hot shot attorneys, hot shot doctors, hot shot whatever it is, okay? The boss of your company, okay? Every man at his best is fraudulent. Okay, whoa, really? The Bible really says that? It does. Okay? It does. So when you hear somebody say, oh, he's a fraud, okay? Of course he's a fraud. So are you, in some way. Okay? Right? I'm a fraud in some way. I'm a fraud. Okay? Just, you gotta understand that it's the truth. Okay? Like, he's been to my house, right? So, no, I talk about like my wife and the problems I have, right? If I was a preacher, like literally, and people knew how my relationship was with my wife, they'd be like, and my wife even said, she goes, you're the last person that should be telling people how to live. I go, well, Tanya, I go, you're right. I go, I don't try to tell them what to live. I try to tell them the truth of the Bible. They can figure out how to live on their own. I never tell somebody how to live. But the thing is, look, if you're going to look at me or anybody and think that, oh, yeah, you got them on this pedestal, whoever you have on a pedestal is a fraud, okay? Psalms tells you they're not a fraud in everything, okay? Like, I'm a doctor, okay? I do like 90+% of what I do works good. There's probably 10% that doesn't, okay? But it doesn't mean that everybody is 100% fraudulent. What it's basically saying is that every man at his best is vanity from God's perspective. Because and literally, that word vanity there literally does, if you look it up, the Hebrew meaning, it means fraudulent. Okay? It means everybody that sets themselves up to be a leader is a poser. If you don't believe me, rich people have what's called coming out parties for the debutante, the 16-year-old. The coming out party for the rich people is, okay, little kids are punks, all right? As they get older, how do you become a punk? How do you go from a punk to a respected adult to where adults are going to take orders from you when you're 18 years old? Well, you have to become an adult. Billy Ray Cyrus did it for Miley Cyrus, okay? And then all of a sudden she's a woman, and now she's on par with everyone and basically above the common people. Donald Trump did it with his children. How he did it with them was he had them sit at the table with him when he was doing. You remember when Donald Trump was doing the "You're Fired" series? Yeah. He had his kids sitting there to help him say "You're fired" and stuff, or to ask the questions. Well, what about this? What about that? Well, these punk ass kids, what do they know? Okay, just because their dad's a multimillionaire, are they any smarter than you? Okay, no, but in other words, rich people create a facade. It's a fraudulent facade that puts them as superior to the rest of the population. It's fraudulent, but just know if they have the position, the peons, like if we're peons, we should, to give them their due because I have the position. But know that the Bible says God is not a respecter of persons. Okay, so while we need to respect authority, if Donald Trump's a multimillionaire and he makes his kids the boss of a company, even if they haven't earned it, if they're our boss, we say yes or no, sir, right? But just understand the Bible knows what he did. He fraudulently made them kings of the world, okay? And God's allowing it for a time until here's when it's not going to be frauds. In the world to come, the last shall be first, and the first who are frauds shall be last. You understand what I just said? Jesus said, many who are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Because God is going to make the toilet bowl cleaners the authority. Okay? I'm serious. Because they're the least fraudulent of the bunch. And they know they're toilet bowl cleaners. God bless you all.